We got a set of 3 different types of end treatments. The one that's called a end anchorage is a 3,000-pound block of concrete. There's an example on Route 43. That's Route 43 from there. That has to be bolted to the rail, turned 90 degrees, and placed in a hole. Each one of those costs about $2,000. Not that expensive, but it's much more difficult to maintain. The buried end wouldn't cost any, just 25 feet on each end longer. The terminal end, which is the one that looks like a boxing glove, is what was specified to the contractor. That's what was bid on. That's the one right there.
That's not good enough.
And that's my recommendation for this type of situation. We can, as it shows there, we can bend it away from the edge of the pavement. Any questions I can answer?
Can we talk?
Yeah.
Can we talk?
Yes.
No, I think it's questions for us right now, right?
Yes.
Yeah,
Question to the board.
I think what we should do is, we got a couple different things going on here. Let me know if you can't hear me through my mask, but first is the completing the project as it was bid. The question is whether to bury the end or have it be a terminal end. That's one question. Then we have going forward, looking at alternatives. There seems like, at least in my mind, there's sort of 2 components of this. One is the guide rail system, and the second is the what happens on top of the bridge itself. But let's get through the project, and again, we're under contract to do things. Is there any strong feelings on burial versus terminal from the board? Do we bid terminal?
Yes.
Right. And there's no real.
So to do the buried, it's an additional $2,000 per end.
The end anchorage would be $2,000 more per end.
Per end, correct? Okay.
Concrete block buried in the center. And it would be 25 feet longer on all 4 corners.
Right, understood. Okay.
How do we interrupt this?
Currently the beam rail is scheduled to just be the same length as what's currently there.
Well, I mean, my instinct is like the things that we've heard that people are upset about is the aesthetic of the metal guardrail. So for me, like the idea to invest more money by burying the ends, if down the line we put something else there, doesn't make sense to me. Like, if we leave the option open to put something more aesthetically pleasing down the line in the budget, I don't see the need to bury the ends right now. That doesn't seem like, I don't know, it doesn't seem like a good use of money if we're gonna, potentially budget for something else down the line. So to my understanding, Gordon, it's too late to do anything now with our current budget.
The only thing that we have money to do is complete the contract that we're under right now.
Okay. Understood.
The thing about metal is it's fairly reusable. And again, our big thing is concern about safety. We do have, I think we have 5 stop signs within, near that bridge. So it's not sort of an unusual, that by itself is a fairly unusual situation. So it's a little bit different than some of the other bridges we've done where there's very lower traffic, not intersections and that kind of stuff. So I'm pretty confident that we wouldn't really gain that much other than, well, it would cost us more be more expensive, and we really wouldn't gain much safety-wise by extending the guardrail. I don't think anyone here would be in favor of more metal rail. So,
And the timber bridge that's quoted at 200,000, that's, so there's a metal backing behind timber, correct?
Correct.
So this, entertain me for a little bit. Has anyone ever like encased a metal beam in wood? Like not necessarily timber, but something quaint that one could build.
Not that I know
Okay. I mean, I'm just trying to think of solutions that could potentially work. Because it seems to me the aesthetic of it is the issue. So how do we mask that?
I mean, there's other systems out there. At one point, not suggesting this, but there was a plastic bridge that we considered at one point putting down the gravel bank just because it was innovative. We didn't do that, concrete and steel. So I'm sure there may be systems out there that would be code compliant that we don't know about. And again, Roger has been talking, we've had several different bridge contractors work for us over the years, including the one that had built the bridge in Milton with the timber. We do have some timber. We do have two timber. I mean, we have everything. We actually do have two timber bridges in Cornwall that put in over the last probably 30 years ago. One's on River Road near the Falls Village line. The second one is on Popple Swamp Road in the old section of Cornwall Bridge. And again, those are 30 years old. They're in good condition. I think part of the concern too is when this bridge, the underneath will have to be replaced in lifetime. So how much you're going to put into something that's going to have to be replaced, and when that happens, maybe the whole thing becomes a timber bridge. I mean, none of that. It's doable. It happens. The timber, generally, we don't do that. We haven't done that recently because we're not confident that the timber will last as long as this bridge or your standard concrete bridge has. We are aware of different finishes. You can see, I think we put a timber guardrail system on the bridge near Ian's shop because that was also held to be, we wanted to match the bridge in some way, but also that does not have the accident history at that site that we have here on Cogswell Green Hill intersection. It's fairly near, it's a very low traffic road. But again, I think there's a bunch of different things that could be investigated. And so, but I think for now, we need to upgrade what we've got. I think, but Roger also came up with some late breaking information here from Harwinton Paving, who's doing the work.
Oh yeah, I saw that. Okay.
Explain that. This appears to be a replacement in the general architectural context of what was there, maybe minus the little column thing. So it's your sketch, so maybe Roger can tell us what that means.
Yeah, talking to the concrete superintendent for Harwinton Paving, I asked him, what it would take to reproduce something similar, not the open 5-inch spindles that were there, but something more similar. If you go up Music Mountain Road, you'll see a 1928 bridge that has a solid parapet with a very similar cap Anyhow, he took a look at that, came back,
Engineers talking.
make, to current standards, it would cost approximately $98,000 for each side to put poured concrete
Much.
there.
90,000 per
What?
side. 98,000 per side.
Right. Now, this is on a bridge that's already 85 years old. So as Gordon mentioned earlier, the economics of, spending a lot of money on this bridge in another 25 years, I would expect that this bridge would probably have to be replaced in its entirety.
Right, right.
So, yeah, and maybe the town speeds that up. I think there's a lot to be researched here, and I don't claim to be as expert as Roger or some of the other people, but there's certainly a lot of different bridge designs that are out there. Of course, it'd be nice to think we could build something that would last as long as this bridge did. But there is some sort of balance to strike. And again, my thought is there are other people that do stuff. We know we might be able to look at alternate systems or just get a fresh set of eyes on what we're there, because we do work with several different firms and engineering things, and so occasionally people will come up with some consultation that might open our eyes to another way of looking at it. So that's as far as I got. Did we actually vote on the guardrail end, John? Right. So let's again try to take this in somewhat sequence. So I'd make a motion that we stay with terminal ends that would make for shorter guardrails, guide rails there, and complete the contract. And then as part of that, we would continue to look at alternate railings, deckings, whatever we want to do through the fall, and maybe come up with some ideas to report back to people as we near our next construction season. We do have, got to get the exact number, we do have a little money left over. We did float a bond to do these bridge projects. We have a little money left over in that, about $60,000. That's generally obligated towards we want to do some maintenance work on some other vintage bridges in town. And again, we did rehabilitate this one pretty thoroughly, as we did its sister bridges on Cream Hill, which are, interestingly enough, the bridges on Cream Hill Road are 4 years older. And we can speculate why the one that was younger had more problems, whether it was more traffic, whether it was location, whether it was the concrete. But I guess the good news is we may have, we still have two intact and fairly good condition bridges nearby on Cream Hill. This was all done in the 30s when that road was actually, those two roads, Cream Hill, that section of Cream Hill and Cogswell, were put in as state roads during the Depression. So again, that was major undertaking at the time. So is that motion clear to people?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's important to realize that, like, this is an interesting event for me, because I do think, like, researching, alternatives is a good idea. I understand the logic of it in terms of, we had to deal with the weight of the parapets. That was the urgent matter, but the bridge will have to be done eventually. So I hope we can take this opportunity, take this commitment to research as much as we can to create alternative possibilities for future bridge work. Because looking back on that meeting, I think I did have concern on the aesthetic, but I understand I understand the logic of the investment right now. So I will second.
Okay, Priscilla, any discussion?
No, I'm sorry to see the ugly newness, but I appreciate the responsibility of keeping our bridges safe. I think that's primary.
Yeah.
Even though I'd like it to look a little different, I think the safeness and the fact that Cornwall continues to be proud to stay on budget and not spend money that we don't have, so that we don't have to raise taxes for the town. Those two things I think are really important: safety and economy.
Okay, any more discussion from the board on guardrails?
Nope, thank you.
All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Okay, so now I think on our agenda we have public comment. Are there comments from the public?
Gordon, I have a question.
Sure, Ruth.
Is school going to be open on election day?
Right now, no, school will be a remote learning day. So again, they're exercising, they'll have an opportunity to exercise remote learning. So that's, yeah, because it's just too much of an impact to have everybody coming to vote starting at 6 o'clock in the morning and then have the school buses show up at this. So no, the school will be in session remotely that day. And I
Okay, thank you.
talked to the principal about studying the historic importance of this particular day going forward. So they've got plenty of plans on how to deal with it.
And could I ask the total cost of that Cogswell Bridge project, estimated about how much those guardrails are going to turn out to be?
Guardrails alone are $14,475.
Okay.
And how much for the other?
The one at Ford Hill Road was a little more. It was just about 20,000.
And how much for the work on the bridge itself?
One bridge?
Or the Cogswell Bridge, there was other work besides the guardrail, what was it not guardrails?
The total work for Cogswell Road is just under $100,000. The work on, I take it back, it's just under $80,000. The work on Ford Hill Road, see the bid was for both bridges to be repaired at the same time, and that's what we've done. And that's $163,000. Most of that was on Ford Hill Road. The Cogswell Road was primarily the traffic safety aspect. The bridge is in remarkably strong condition. It is deteriorating. If you look at it, you'll see the concrete is decomposing. That's why I say another 25 years, we'll probably have to do something more. But right now, it's primarily traffic safety on Cogswell Road. And that was just about 60,000.
Okay, so any other public comments? Okay.
Gordon,
Yes.
this is Toby, Cornejo, hi.
Hi.
Thank you for putting this on the agenda tonight. I'm wondering, of the 6 bridges that were replaced already, it's hard to remember them at this point. They've changed over time, over the last few years. Were others of those bridges also from this era?
Well, let's see. Let's go through what we've done. We've done the culvert on Lake Road, and that we think was put in after the 55 flood. The bridge on Ford Hill, which is also on the Hollenbeck off 43, we think it was 58, so that was also after the 55 flood. So those are 2 bridges there. We did an interesting I'd say the most similar bridge we did was up on Music Mountain. I'm not sure, I want to ask Roger, because it's sort of like a little pet project to start looking at different bridges and different treatments and stuff. So there is a bridge that belongs to the town of Cornwall on Music Mountain Road. Most people feel the boundary at the end of Cream Hill, but the town of Cornwall actually extends about 500 feet onto Music Mountain Road. If you take a right off of Cream Hill, you'll see a really beautiful stone laid bridge there, which unfortunately had a very substandard guardrail system that somebody took out 3 winters ago. They went right through it, knocked off the parapets. They did not go in the brook, but they basically smashed right through the parapets on the bridge. So in that case, we did a similar treatment to what's happening here. We didn't touch the underneath of the bridge, but we did put in beam rail on either side of the bridge. So that, I would assume, that bridge could be 1930 just because of its
Yes, that's
its look. It looks like somebody spent, I mean,
it's all planked. If you look at underneath the bridge, you'll see the planks that they use for the forms.
right. So that probably is the oldest thing we've done. It's the most similar. We did an ancient bridge on the end of Valley Road, which is, you know, that and the one we did on Flat Rocks probably had footings that could have been well over 100 years old. They were before the Depression. And again, those were just laid up stone foundations that sort of were crumbling. So we put in new bridges there. So that's actually an older vintage. And then we did a 1950s type bridge in West Cornwall at the old meat market. And we did one at the town gravel bank, which is also replacing a 1950s Cornwall homegrown bridge at the town gravel bank off Route 128. So we didn't replace anything identically to this, but it's fairly similar treatment to what we did up on Music Mountain Road, which is also it's right on the Blue Trail, the old Appalachian Trail. It's a beautiful little bridge. If you want to take a nice hike, it's right next to Dean's Ravine. So again, you know, bridge.
I have I guess a related question. When we do public projects like this in Cornwall, you know, the first thing I did after seeing this bridge be torn down and was just sort of Googled bridges Cornwall. And I found a 2012 article in a newspaper about some similar road work that was done adjacent to another another person's property, where they were surprised to come down the driveway and see lots of trees torn down. And at the end of the article, the reporter quoted the homeowner saying, you know, it seems like we should have been notified by the town. Is there any kind of guidance in the town regulations, planning and zoning, or DOT related work where work of this kind is happening next to 3 historic homes? Like if this were to happen again, is there anything that could be implemented if it's not there, where the adjacent property owners at minimum are notified before anything has gotten to the point where it's bid out and it's a done deal?
Well, to answer your question, there's no formal requirement, because to do that, could we do it? We could do it, but as I said, I don't think we're not going to do a project like this in the foreseeable future. We did, just so you know, we did have public meetings, because we had a fairly elaborate process to get the bonding. So in order to even get the money, we had to get an engineering report, which was the basis of the bond, which we then did have to go to a town meeting to convince people and the Board of Finance that we need to do that. We did so that happened probably 3 or 4 years ago. And all these projects get reviewed on a fairly annual basis at the annual town meeting. And then,
Gordon, is there any weight placed during these evaluations on the historic importance of these elements in the town? there is a lot of literature out there about the challenges of maintaining historic bridges because they have older materials and older designs that don't meet current crash ratings and things like that. But there are solutions. In the town evaluation process, has there been any discussion, or could we start thinking more about the historic value of some of these bridges? I mean, I recognize there aren't that many left now, but we do have 2 more still on Green Hill Road in the same area.
I mean, in particular, I'm sure we can, or whoever sits here in 30 years can do that, and we can make special note of that especially for those bridges. And again, when we did any bridge that happens is going to have to be subject to a town meeting vote. And even when we did the bridge by Ian's, which was an emergency, we had to have a pretty elaborate way to go through Wetlands Commission. That one we actually had to go to the state historic people because for some reason, I think we got some FEMA money or something for that. They had to do some probing of the site. So there's a pretty elaborate, so there's wetlands, there's a town meeting, there's a board of finance, there's a pretty rigorous local process, but certainly the town could notify neighbors, you know, and again, if we do a major project like that, but I don't see the town, you know, touching those ones for a long period of time. The problem is with the whole thing is you may be, especially those, you know, the oldest of bridges that even go back before this, obviously we probably, it doesn't make sense to probably at least in my mind, it doesn't make sense to give special status to a bridge that has a laid up stone superstructure. I mean, that time is long gone, I think. So I wouldn't, I mean, I grew up in the Fishman's house and we played a lot underneath the bridge, and I have some attachment to that part of the world. But as a practical consideration, just saving, I don't think we have too many laid up stone bridges left, do we, Roger?
Not much of any size. We have a lot of small bridges that are rubble masonry, you know,
Okay.
Bloody Brook.
Bloody Brook, which we actually are going to do some concrete work on. So there's no major, I don't think there's any, other than those 2 on Cream Hill, I don't think there's anything that would intersect with, you know, historic value. But obviously the WPA had a huge role in town and things. So I think your ideas have merit, but our problem is we have somewhat of a variety of different things. Yeah.
I guess I was interested in Marina's comment at the February town meeting, a question asking if there was any precedent for funding improvements like this, partially with town money and partially with private donations. It seems to me like this particular bridge and the other ones along Cream Hill are really a town sort of asset. They're public infrastructure that really adds to the rural character of the town. And just like we've seen something like the Cornwall Conservation Trust preserve a lot of the land and a lot of the views that give the character to what it feels like when you're driving around the town. It feels like these 3 bridges have a similar role. And I'm just wondering if there can be more of a public approach to treating them as those kinds of assets where there's more creativity and more thought process put into what happens to them, or how they're cared for, or how they're recreated, or how they're funded. So it's not solely about, is it $14,000 or is it a lot more? It's treating them, you know, in a broader equation.
I mean, I think one of the things the town does have, because we are we're not a 501c3, but we're the government equivalent of that, that if people do donate to the town and town projects, it is tax deductible. So going forward, if there is a big project that is, you know, a bridge or something, there may be a way to make up the difference between what is sort of an engineering solution and what is an aesthetic solution. So if people are feeling robust in that way, there may be a way to do a you know, some sort of enhancement to the town budget on that. So,
Is it possible to get a copy of the engineering report that was done for the bonds?
yes, absolutely. We have it right here. All this stuff is public document. You can get a copy of that. You can get a copy of the bid. Yeah, we can send you, John. You want just you want the whole deal. The whole report is the whole report is.
Could it be posted on the town website, or is it there already?
I think it probably was when we did the town meeting. It's 48 pages plus. It's interesting. And of course,
And can the bid documents for the current handrail solution be on the town website also, the design documents?
we can endeavor to do that. Yeah, and then, granted, some of these have actually been done, but you know, as you're, yeah, it shows pretty thoroughly it's good because it shows some of the bridges. I'm looking at Valley Road, so it'll show you some of the work that we've done to date, and there's a lot of the ones that we have replaced. A lot of nice pictures of Roger underneath the bridges. Yeah, so we can certainly make this available.
And my last question is there a timeline, ballpark timeline, when you think the entire bridge itself, like the embankments that are underneath it and the road part of it, and then the guardrails again, would all need to be replaced because of the larger need for replacement?
For the foreseeable future, the bridge is capable of carrying all legal loads. So until it deteriorates, you know, further, and I'm using a number like 20, 25, 30 years, I have no idea. As long as the bridge remains in the condition it's in, it can carry all legal loads.
And if one wanted, sorry, one more question. If one wanted to replace it sooner than it deteriorated to the point where it couldn't carry legal loads, how would that process work?
Well, again, you know, if there's somebody out there that wants to buy the town a new bridge, then that's one track. I mean, if there's private money that really wants to replace the bridge, we could. When we're looking at alternatives, we could get some ballpark figures for a brand new timber bridge. We could do a brand new concrete bridge. We could do several different things. I think, yeah, because we've done similar projects and the spans are fairly similar to some of the things we've done. But the process would work that the Board of Selectmen would have to approach, you know, put it in its 5-year plan and approach the Board of Finance. The Board of Finance would have to say this makes this makes financial sense for the town, and then it would go to a town meeting for the town taxpayers to vote on. So it's all very public. I mean, and then you have to go to wetlands and a bunch of, you know, there's a bunch of other approvals that have to happen. But the main thing is you have to get the selectmen to sign off, the Board of Finance to sign off, and then finally get a town meeting to sign off, assuming that this would be all publicly financed. And I think, I would guess the town would have to, it'd be enough money, the town probably would have to bond again for a complete replacement, but that's just a guess.
Thank you.
We'd have to weigh everything else, you know, I mean, the townspeople, the town boards have to weigh all the other priorities that are in front of the town right now. You know, it's very much a public process, very much a you know, weighing priorities, making
And
choices.
Was there some kind of crash requirement that changed recently that necessitated why, you know, why was it torn down now versus a year ago? Did something change?
Well, no, I don't think it was, there's no standards that I know that changed other than it was identified in this report that the underneath was in fair condition, but the parapet was decomposing. And so that put it on the list to do. Plus we had a certain amount, once we got the engineering report, we had a certain amount of time in which to do the work. We have to spend the bond in a certain amount of time, can't hold on to the bond. So again, we're under that. Once that was put in motion, we had a list of projects to do over the last 3 years, and this was the last, well, the next to last group. This is the last big works, and then we have a bunch of small concrete maintenance work to do on some of the other ones. Okay, so any other questions? Anyway, we're here, and again, we will.
Hello, I'd like to speak. Jim Fishman. Just a couple of things. We've been told, at least I've seen, that it would cost $200,000 more to keep the concrete bridge, but yet you never got any bids on it. So I have to question that. Also, a more general concern is that, you know, there seems to be a lack of concern with historic preservation of buildings and maintenance of scenic views that makes Cornwall so special. Sunday, I was walking by the UCC and there's a field there with a pile of bricks. And I realized that was Rumsey Hall. I would think with some vision at the time, that is a building that might have been preserved with private money and retrofitted for town use. Also, for 15 years at least, we've been talking about a septic system in West Cornwall, and we're still talking about it. And West Cornwall has been slipping into decrepitude. And, you know, it's almost like a ghost town. I mean, I think we have a need for a registry of historic and special places which need to be preserved and protected so that this doesn't happen again. And also, I think we need a little more leadership from our political leaders in terms of things like this. There seems to be decisions are taken without any regard to the historic nature, the scenic view, or anything like that. I mean, the number of people who we did overlook this bridge, and the number of people who would stop, who were hiking, walking, and look at the Scotch property was really substantial. And, you know, that was not considered at all. So what you have is a highway rail. You know, I can't say any more. You probably don't want me to anyway.
Public comment, you can say whatever you wish. Any other public comments? I will say there are people that have expressed different views to me as far as, you know, they're glad to get the old rail replaced and safety is their priority. I'm not saying that's all I think about, but there are different viewpoints as far as, you know, road improvements go. So, Ann, you had your hand up.
I have a couple questions, one for you and one for Roger Kane, sort of clarification. But the first one is, you said when the bridge down by Ian's was replaced, that there was some sort of historic, it was state money, so there was some kind of historical assessment by the state. Did I understand that
You did.
correctly?
That's my vague recollection, but I'm pretty sure we were, that was a peculiar project because it was washed out in a hurricane and there on the other side of the bridge that had to be, they were cut off from the road access was cut off. So again, Roger was a project manager with that. We made a very good effort to fast track that project to restore fire protection and utilities to people. And out in the fall, going on. But because there was some FEMA money, we did have to consult with the Office of Historic Preservation. So I went out and met with them and
Sorry, I don't know why I keep getting telephones.
digging up a important historic area.
Mhm.
That was an old turnpike and had been used primarily as a road for a long period of time. So they're more or less, I believe, Roger, aren't they concerned? Because Roger worked with the state for a long time. I think they're more or less concerned about the impact that we weren't, our construction was not destructing a historic site in the roadbed. It was what they were after. And they found some stuff, old metal and things, but there was nothing of significance there.
So why wasn't the historical assessment done for this bridge if there was state money involved?
This is all town funded. This is not.
Oh, all right, I see.
And the state has very little money. Then you get federal funds, which is another whole deal. And sometimes so again, the state recommended that we replace this bridge 25 years ago. And in order to get the state funding, we would probably have to put in something that is more elaborate, you might want to say over-engineered. But again, 20 years ago, we decided to, rehab the parapets. So, but as there was no state funding involved, and even if there was, I don't think their narrow focus on what was going on the roadbed would have changed the design of the bridge. They're not going to say the town has to build, a colonial-esque bridge today.
Well, Colonial is different from WPA though. Because there's a lot of attention to WPA projects and preservation of them in other places. And that's why I would have thought if there was state oversight, there might have been some attention paid to that. I personally feel there should be some value, some aesthetic and cultural attention paid to these projects by the town also, where we have, sorry, I don't know what's going on with my phone, where we have sites of aesthetic and cultural importance. And as I understand it, we don't have a town agency that looks after these things. Is that correct? There's no town oversight specifically of aesthetic and cultural entities.
I think we rely on the opinions expressed at town meetings to guide us and through our town decision-making process. And also town boards have to operate under state statute. We don't have a cultural police or an aesthetic police in town. And if we did, we have planning and zoning, but all the actions of all the regulatory agencies are generally pretty well defined by state regulations. And there is, other than making the entire town an historic district, there is no real regulations for that. So.
Okay, I understand. I'm new to this. I'm trying to understand it. And I thought that there was something Roger said that I was curious about too. I thought he said that one of the bridges in town was an earlier patent. Is that correct? In other words, was there a patent for the bridge that was just destroyed? And if there was, is there a way to rescue that patent and make another one that looked just like it?
As far as patents go, there are patents on different types of bridges. the covered bridge is a very good example of
Mhm.
trust. So a lot of the early bridges, a lot of the bridge up at the Great Falls is a patent bridge. The
Was.
covered was, right, well,
Was.
it still exists there, doesn't it?
No, they took the whole thing out.
Oh, well, there's a good example of one that was slated to be a pedestrian bridge when they replaced the bridge up at the Great Falls. And I haven't been up there in a while, and I hear it's gone. But like Boardman Bridge in New Milford was turned into a pedestrian bridge, and no one uses it. It's in very bad condition, and the town put in a new bridge and left the existing truss there as a pedestrian bridge, but no one maintains it. If a bridge isn't used actively, it deteriorates very rapidly. As far as the bridge that on Cogswell Road, that is a very typical highway design back in the early 30s.
Right, we know that, right.
Back in those days, it was the highway department. You gave them a length and a width, and they'd give you a set of plans for the bridge. It was that off the shelf. So those plans are still available through the Department of Transportation.
But what about the mold for the end piece?
They,
Would that exist still with the date and everything on it? Would that be part of the patent?
There's no patent. There was a standard.
I see. Okay, thank you.
Those numbers that were on each bridge
Mhm.
changed about every 10 years. You'll see, if you look at a bridge in the 1920s, it'll be different than one in the 30s or the 40s. Some years they did away with the numbers altogether. They're back to using them again on small bridges.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Any other comments? Okay, well, thank you all for attending. And where are we at? Oh, so we are at addition to the agenda. Speaking of Cornwall early history, the Allen Cemetery, which was Cornwall's first burying ground, the town owns. I want to get a plot plan because it's surrounded by private property. It's off Route 125. And I went up there recently with the highway foreman. There's several trees that have fallen into the cemetery or near the cemetery. We would like to see it, little access way there cleared up so people can go up in there. There's a little monument that was erected about 100 years ago to Cornwall's pioneers and to Joseph Allen, who is father of Ethan Allen, Ira Allen, who helped found Vermont. So there's a little monument up there, and there's the remains of a page wire fence, which I think we can bring back with new fencing and reestablish the fence around it. There's a nice little cast iron door gateway that's probably the same vintage as the monument. And so that's our little effort to bring a little Cornwall treasure back to good condition. So Jim feels with, again, there's some big trees here. One of the advantages of that cemetery is there are no headstones. There's just field stones. Back in the day when people didn't have the funds to erect big monuments to themselves in cemeteries, they just put a rock out there. So there it is. So anyway, so we can get in there. Again, we're going to work with the tree warden and try to get some of the trees that are leaning taken out. There are quite a few big pine trees around there. It's a beautiful setting. Again, and try to reestablish the fence. It's not a major undertaking, but I think we can probably do it with our town forces. And so to spruce it up for the next 20 years. So anyway, we'll keep that as an agenda item. And we would like to, again, when the Green Mountain Power people came down here to help us out in the storm, they were quite intrigued. that Ethan Allen actually wasn't born in Vermont. He came from Connecticut with his friends. And so anyways, it is a very important part of our history that a lot of people don't know about, and we'll do our small part to at least bring it back. And again, there's, on a very much smaller scale, but there is this interesting, very unique period piece of fencing system, which the fence itself is gone, but the posts are there, and we can replicate what was there 100 years ago and keep the some of the memories alive in that part of town. So anyway, I think we can do all that with our forces and get it done this fall. Our target date is to get it done by Veterans Day in November. So that's all I had. Again, thank you all for joining us. And is there a motion to adjourn?
I move to adjourn.
Yep, I'll second that. All in favor?
Aye.
Good night, everyone.
Thank you, everybody.
Good night. Stay well.
You too.